Well, I would like to share a story which is, believe it or not, true story. And it goes like this. It's actually a story of my mother, and it partly happened in my presence when I was 4 years old. So it's actually a story as told to me by my own mother. Now, the story starts when my mother was about 10 years old, and this is 1936 or around that year. Now, my mother was born in a Sindhi Hindu family which has the Sikh religious tradition, and she was being told at home by her parents about Guru Nanak and other, the spiritual masters of the Sikh tradition. And then she was attending a convent school where the Christian missionaries were telling her about Jesus Christ. So these two inputs made her crazy about God. Now, when this happened, she was about 10 years old, and she picks up a postcard that was lying somewhere in the house, and she writes a letter to God on the postcard saying, "My dear God, I hear so many nice things about you, and now I love you. So I want to meet you face to face." This is what she writes. And then she puts her name, Girija. She was Karamchandani, her surname. And on the other side now she has to put the address. So she writes, "Dear God, in heaven." So because she's told in the school that God lives in heaven. Then she quietly goes and puts that postcard letter into the post box, the letter box. And then, of course, she forgets about it, a 10-year-old little girl doing that. Now it so happens that India gets independence, and she's now a young girl, a young woman rather, who's married to my father. And my father was a worldly person, and he had made a big house, a villa by the sea in a place called Karachi. But then when Pakistan happened, he lost all that property and his own father's property. My grandfather's lot of landed property was all gone. So my father lost faith in material things, and now he was in search of God. So he comes to know of a person by the name of Meher Baba. This happened in the year 1948, and now he heard of Meher Baba in 1948, and in 1958 he meets a gentleman who tells him that Meher Baba is in Pune, India. So he is very eager, very anxious to meet Meher Baba, because he broadly understands that Meher Baba can take him to God or show him the way to God. So he goes to Meher Baba and in Pune, in Guru Prasad, and then Meher Baba tells him, "Are you married?" So he says, "Yes." And then Meher Baba asks him, "Do you have children?" And my father says, "Yes, I have got 2 boys. And this is 1958 when I was 4 years old." So Meher Baba tells my father, "If you come again, you can bring your wife and your kids." So my father comes home and he's very impressed with the personality of Meher Baba, and he tells my mother that, "Look, you are invited by this spiritual master." My mother was not very interested, because she had an apprehension, a doubt, if this person, Meher Baba, would mesmerize her, hypnotize her, and play on her consciousness. So she was not really interested. But then, having got an invitation to turn it down was also looking inappropriate. So she goes along with my father, and my father takes us, myself and my elder brother, two of us, and we go to see Meher Baba. And Meher Baba, with open arms, welcomes us all, and he embraces my mother. And my mother hesitates, and then he tells her that you sit down by his side. He's sitting on a sofa like this, and he tells my mother to sit close to him, and which she does. And there are about 20 people seated in front of Meher Baba on the floor. And now they begin chatting, and everybody there in the room is very happy, because having a look at this person made them happy. All felt very happy. And then in the midst of all that happy talking, Meher Baba kept looking at my mother, and he found that she was all the time looking down. She was not looking into his eyes. So he tells her, why don't you look into my face? Look, everybody in front is smiling because they are looking at me, and they are happy because they are seeing me. So my mother just nods her head, but she doesn't look up into his eyes, because she has this fear that this man might hypnotize her or mesmerize her. Now that day is over, and then Meher Baba tells her, well, if you come again, you are welcome. So my father brings her again after a day or two, and again the same thing happens. She's made to sit next to him on the floor near his feet, and she's again very hesitant to look up into his face, into his eyes. And Meher Baba tells her that, look, feel free, don't hesitate, look into my eyes. She says yes, but she doesn't do that. And now again she goes home, and again she gets invited by Meher Baba. So now she comes for the third time, and again Meher Baba makes her sit very close to his seat on the sofa. On the floor, of course, she's sitting. And again he says, well, you can look at me. And she is not doing that. So Meher Baba was silent. He used to talk with gestures. And there was this Erech Jasawala who translated the gestures of Meher Baba. And I was sitting there in that room that day. And Meher Baba tells my mother, he reminds her that you wrote a letter to me. You wrote a letter to God. And she's forgotten. She says, when did I write a letter to him? She's confused. She's thinking, I never wrote a letter to this man. But he tells, try to think, try to recall. Remember, you wrote a letter to God on a postcard, and you yourself posted it into the letterbox. And with that kind of a clue, she was reminded of the story that had happened 20 years before, when she was just about 10, 12 years old little girl. And then it suddenly dawned on her that yes, I had indeed written a letter to God, asking God that I want to see you. And Meher Baba told her that, look, it was in response to that letter to God on the postcard that he was repeatedly asking her to have a look at his face and look at him. And then she realized that there was something more than she could understand in the whole story that had just unfolded. And from that day on, she started looking at his face, and she knew that this man is not going to hypnotize her, is not going to mesmerize her, but his call to look at him was in response to the little child's longing to see God and to feel the love of God. So this is like the believe it or not story, and in fact I call it a bombshell story, because even now when I narrate this incident, it's like a bombshell indeed, and it's a believe it or not story. So here is a little story, enjoy it for whatever it is worth to you. Thank you.
Awesome. Great story.
Yeah.